The playoffs continue under the lights at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway as we welcome you here this evening to Flatout Racing Network's coverage of race number 28 of the Rapid Fire Pizza National Series. This is the middle race of the first round of the playoffs. 8 drivers will be moving on from this round of 12 at the conclusion of next week's race at Charlotte Roval, but we're right here in the middle, which could be the make it or break it race for a number of drivers. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Anthony McCurry. And Anthony, not a very big field here tonight and 150 laps at this mile-and-a-half track. Something says to me these drivers have got to have their car set up for the long run.
Absolutely. This is a fast track here in Las Vegas, and we're under the lights tonight, which makes the track even faster. And with such a small field, yeah, you got to have it set up for the long run. I don't think that many cars are going to be battling too close to each other. And the way I've been seeing these drivers run throughout practice, and it seems like that once they get going on a long run, the cars become super tight, and it gets to the point where it's really hard to battle somebody. So definitely getting ready for a long race tonight. 150 laps here tonight. Definitely one of the longer races on the season.
We saw a lot of torn-up race cars in the first race of the playoffs last week, the half-mile Bristol Motor Speedway, in which we saw Barry Stevens go to victory lane. So he's the only driver that comes into tonight's race already knowing he's locked into the round of 8. For the rest of these other drivers, it's not necessarily a must-win situation, but you look down there near the cut line, you've got Kevin Roy, who right now is the 8th driver currently, but he's only 2 points ahead of Evan Longacre and only 6 points ahead of Roger Gregory, and both of those drivers are in the field here tonight, going to be gunning for that number 4.
Yeah, he's going to be he got a bit of a challenge tonight, having to deal with those other 2 drivers, and Gregory and Longacre, they're not going to hold back at all. And if I was Kevin Roy, I would be looking out for them on the track. And you got to have a good run here tonight, because once you get to the Roval, this is going to be it's going to throw a monkey wrench into this championship run. As we've been at a short track, a mile and a half, and then you're going to a road course next weekend. So if you have a good run here tonight, you got to keep that momentum into the next race, which is something that's not easy, or is easier said than done.
Now, 2 drivers that are also in the field tonight that we did not see start the playoffs, even though they had made their way into the postseason. Joshua Gordon in the 93, Brandon Andrews in the 24. They come into this 32 and 33 points, respectively, behind that cut line. Do they just need to gun for a top 5 tonight, or do you think that with the fact there's only 2 more races in this round, they're almost in a must-win situation?
I would feel that they're not in a must-win yet, but they are definitely getting close to where they have to be. If they have bad runs here tonight and other drivers have good runs that they're trying to leapfrog to get up to that cut line, then it really does become a must-win when we get to Charlotte. But I wouldn't call it one tonight, but definitely a tough situation for those 2.
Of course, going into the Charlotte Roval next week, only 2 drivers have won at the road courses so far this season. Brendan Burcroft has won 2. Our pole sitter tonight, Logan Helton, has won 2, and he's going to lead them down here to the green flag. It's an all-super front row with Helton and Williams, and we're underway here tonight at Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
Matt Knight got a bit of a run, and Helton is going to be on the inside trying to hold that first position going into turn 1 for the first time, side by side between Williams and the Centenni, and they try to battle through turn 2. It looks like, going up close to the wall. That was Williams, I believe, and looks like everyone's gotten through turns 1 and 2 okay here at Las Vegas.
Right now, your top 4 all consisting of Supras, 2 out of the BJ McLeod camp, 2 out of the Joe Gibbs Racing camp, and cooler track conditions here tonight for these drivers. Obviously, with the nighttime conditions, it'll be interesting to watch and see if a lot of drivers try and migrate to that second groove. But you can see it worked for Tim Williams, held on to second place.
Yeah, Williams with the higher groove definitely was able to carry more speed around this track. And 1 and 2 it's a little bit different than 3 and 4. It's that there's a couple of bumps down on the inside line, and you hit those bumps, and then it makes your car very unhappy, and you can run it right on the white line down through 3 and 4, which we're seeing a lot of these drivers do. And you just have to run both these sets of turns differently than one another. And right now we're seeing Williams electing to follow the leader Helton, and they're running basically identical lines. You see William goes a little bit lower than him, trying to get that advantage, and he is going to have a bit of a run on the backstretch. We'll see what he does with it.
One thing about it, too, Las Vegas doesn't exactly have the room to be able to hold them 3 wide. It's actually one of the more narrower of the mile-and-a-half tracks, and you're going to see a lot of what you were just talking about, how Williams trying to run a different line there to Logan Helton, because there is that aero push that the driver behind experiences. He wants to get the clean air to the nose as much as possible going into the corner.
Yeah, and this is a fast track too. We got some of the highest banking that we have at some of these mile-and-a-half tracks, and it's once you get these cars are so aerodynamic dependent that once they get into dirty air, it becomes really hard. As you mentioned, you've seen them run that inside line, trying to break the airflow, trying to get into that clean air, and we're seeing speeds consistently running up into the high one in the turns, the low 170s, and down the front stretch. By the time they get into turn number one, we're seeing them hit almost 190, and these cars are going really fast, and if something bad happens, especially in 1 and 2 with that bump we mentioned earlier, then you might find yourself in the wall quicker than you'd like to.
Maybe getting a little bit of that bump there going into turn one might have been Brandon Andrews. His car kind of shot up the track and opened the door for Carson Bowers to take the 6th position. His teammate Matt White trying to move by for 7th. And those top 5 have been able to get themselves rather single filed out. And they've actually opened up over a second between themselves in this battle for 6th place.
Yeah, they're rocketing away, and running, not being competitive with each other, trying to stay in line with each other, not really trying to make everyone miss. That's kind of what we're seeing here. Is they're just happy to run single file, get a bit of an advantage from Bowers, who's now gotten clear and might start to run these top 5 down as he's putting in some pretty fast laps. Matt White is going underneath Andrews now, trying to get that 7th position away from the 24, and it looks like he's going to clear him going onto the front stretch. And he does indeed make the pass.
Carson Bowers finished 2nd last week at Bristol, subsequently comes into this race 8 points ahead of the cut line. Another driver that is not in tonight's race that was up inside of the top 8 coming into Las Vegas Motor Speedway was the Richard Childress Racing entry, the number 2 of Chris Whitaker. He was only 3 points ahead of the cut line, and with him not starting here tonight and a lot of drivers that were below the cut line starting tonight, Whitaker could find himself in a very critical situation next week at the Charlotte Roval. As we got a car in the wall, 4th place, Tom Laneville brushed it pretty good, and he's got some pretty good damage around that right front.
Yeah, we're starting to see where the tires are going to fall off. The exit of turn 4 is going to be really hard for a lot of these drivers as the wall just kind of creeps up on you. There's really nowhere for him for these drivers to really have any bit of error. Is when they go out of turn 4, the wall is literally right there, and we just saw that with Laneville, and he's doesn't look like that car's hurt too bad, although he is flirting with that outside wall a little bit more now. But I have to keep an eye on the 18. He doesn't seem like he's too slow, but he is being caught by Bowers and White.
I want to watch him here as we're inside the cockpit of the 18. Want to watch him off of turn 2 here because it looked like he drifted up towards the wall again the last lap and really turned it as hard left as possible to keep it off the wall. And we're only 9 laps in, but this is, as you said, the clear indication when the tires start wearing down of who really has the long run setups and who had their car set up maybe for some short runs.
Yeah, that 18 is not in a very good way. He's gotten very slow and very tight. And yeah, the long run cars, you'll see them kind of fall back, which it leads me to believe maybe that Bowers and White have been set up for a long run because they kind of hung back for a little while as Bowers now trying to get underneath the 18 for the 5th place position, and they're starting to slowly close their way up. Their cars might be set a little bit looser than all others, and maybe they're trying to hold back a little bit, not use your stuff up, because you got to have something that you can battle side by side later on in the race. And if you have worn out tires, especially at this track, it's almost impossible.
Battle for the 2nd position as David Santini got a nice run out of turn 4, completes the pass now on Tim Williams. So now put BJ McLeod Motorsports 1st and 2nd. Williams not going to go away quietly, though. Takes a look back to the inside line. He'll at least be the left rear quarter panel going into 3.
Yeah, that he sailed it in there. He almost got up into the 99 of Santini, and we're still side by side battling. That 99 has got a really good run on the outside, hasn't really left. He's going to have pretty much a preferred line going down into turn 1. What can he do with it? Can he keep the position? Can he keep the momentum? And it looks like the Santini is going to maybe hold off the 19 if he doesn't get into the wall.
Boy, that was close.
And that could have been really bad for the 99, but he does keep 2nd and gotten cleared by about half a car length.
So Santini will indeed take the 2nd spot. Williams drops back to 3rd. Battling again going on around that 5th position. Well, maybe not really battling, maybe just 2 drivers, 2 teammates trying to work together to catch up to this top 4 in Carson Bowers and Matt White. We talked about Kevin Roy, the situation he is in coming into this race. 8 of the 12 playoff drivers Pretty decent run right now in the 8th position, but more importantly, he's running ahead of drivers that are trying to take that spot away from him. Roger Gregory's just behind him in 9th, Evan Longacre back in 11th. So Kevin Roy, this car out of JD Motorsports, doing what he needs to do, at least early on.
And Longacre just passed the 18 for position. That 18 has fallen off really bad. There is definitely something wrong with that car. But yeah, the Longacre, Gregory, Roy, they're all running right nose to tail with each other basically on the racetrack. And, you know, with this good run that they're having, they are going to put themselves in a better position when we get to Charlotte next week. And you got to be thinking that Roy is thinking, I got to make as many passes as possible. As now he's going to the inside of the 24 of Andrews trying to make the passes. Andrews goes to the extreme outside line trying to get some momentum off. But now a battle between the 4 and the 24 down the front stretch.
And with you got right now, Logan Helton, David Santini, both out in front, 1st and 2nd. Really no surprise to see those two showing the way. They've been the class of the field just about all season, with Santini going to victory lane 7 times this season, Helton going to victory lane 4. However, Bristol was not kind to them last week, as both were running 1st and 2nd and got caught up in a wreck with a lap machine. They came into this race, and they came into last week's race pretty well situated with their bonus points and everything as far as making it into the next round. But I think that more importantly for the two of them, they're wanting to get their mojo back, wanting to get their string of good finishes back, especially heading towards that round of 8.
Yeah, you got to have some momentum. And Santini got a little piece of the wall going down the back stretch. Speaking of momentum, he's got to watch how much he's using of his car. But yeah, you got to get that momentum back that you once had, and now you're falling back. Bristol was not kind to these top runners that we're seeing here tonight, and you know, it kind of messes with your head a little bit. You think that, oh, now it kind of starts the bad luck stream. Like, what's going to happen next week? You got to get that out of your mind. And you know, when we get to the round of 8, they've got to keep that momentum. So heading into Charlotte, they will have some momentum if everything goes well tonight. It's still early on the race. Still a lot can happen, but so far everything's looking pretty good for the 99 and the 8.
Right now, they've opened up a little bit of distance back to Tim Williams. You have to wonder how much the 19 used up of his stuff, trying to battle with Santini to hold on to that 2nd position. And looking here at Logan Helton out in front, you know, we also are going to be heading into next week, the elimination race at the Charlotte Roval. I mentioned the fact that our 2 of our 4 road course races this season were won by Logan Helton. Well, guess who was that finished 2nd to him in both of those races? It's that 99 that's right behind him and David Santini. And their teammate, Barry Stevens, of course, is already locked into the round of 8 with his win at Bristol last week. So you got to wonder which one of these two BJ McLeod Motorsports drivers wants to get themselves locked into the round of 8 more here tonight at Las Vegas.
Well, if I was Helton, I would assume it would be me, because Santini's been on a tear this season with 7 wins, and Helton, you know, the 4 wins isn't anything to shake a stick at. That's not easy to do either. But compared to the 2 of these drivers, Helton, I think, wants to say, yeah, it's me. Even though that I might not be the most dominant driver between the 2 of us, I definitely want to take this win and prove that just because I don't have as many wins as you, I definitely can get locked into a championship round much quicker than you. And you know, that brings into some mind games, like what can I do next week also to make it to double down if I do win tonight? What can I do to not really make it so that Santini can't have any good luck or have any good finishes, but what can I do to even advance the mind games between the 2 of us?
I know it's interesting as well with them having an elimination race at a road course, because they're drivers, they dread going to road courses, and you got to wonder if any of those drivers are in the field here tonight, playoff contenders that are realizing, you know, maybe I have to make sure that I finish well here tonight in Las Vegas, give myself a little bit of a cushion just in case Charlotte doesn't go so well for me next week.
I'm sorry, Seth, you cut out a little bit there. I missed the ending bit of what you said.
Oh, that's okay. I was just basically saying that, you know, they're drivers that don't necessarily like driving at road courses, don't have the best of luck there, and they may be looking here tonight at Las Vegas, needing a good run, having themselves a bit of a cushion between themselves and that cutoff line, advancing to the round of 8, just in case something happens next week at Charlotte.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So for some of these drivers that aren't, like you said, aren't road course mind, these cars are not the easiest to drive at road courses either. And, when you only go to 4 on a season, I mean, 4 is a lot compared to other leagues that run different types of races and different types of tracks. But 4 road courses on the season, in contrast to the other races, then you might not be so good at them. And these cars, like I mentioned, aren't that, centered for road course racing. And yeah, it's definitely the urgency to get a padding here tonight is definitely more. It's higher than it would normally be, considering that next week is also a cutoff race, and some of those drivers like Longacre and Stevens, they got to be thinking in the back of their mind. Not Stevens, my bad. Longacre you got to be thinking that in the back of his mind, he's got to be thinking about that, knowing that I got to get a good finish tonight if I want to have a chance next week. But Seth, we've seen cutoff races at a lot of different tracks. Having this race be kind of in the middle of the run between a short track and a road course, this race has kind of gotten into a bit of a stretch of let's settle in and see what happens. Is a lot of these drivers are spread out now. Is this what you expected to see from Las Vegas, or are you kind of surprised?
Well, if this were a daytime condition race at Las Vegas, I probably would expect to see a lot more slipping and sliding. I think that the thing that's really helped these drivers out tonight is the fact they have a little bit of added grip, the cooler track conditions with the nighttime. So I think that that's helped these drivers to be able to keep their cars underneath them. I think the biggest problem they've had so far here tonight is avoiding their cars getting tight, running behind somebody and getting to the outside wall. Haven't seen too many drivers loose off the corner. So no, I have to say, when I saw these guys out here in the track conditions, the track temperature, I fully expected to see these guys going into long green flag runs. I could actually see the potential of this 150 laps going green flag from start to finish. But I'm keeping my eye here on this 11 car of Matt White, because you talk about a driver set up for the long run. He was back around the 7th position about 10 laps ago. He's worked his way up to 4th, and he's actually reeled in the top 3. He's been running anywhere from 1.5 to 2 tenths faster for the last 5 to 7 laps.
Yeah, he has definitely got a fast car. And as you mentioned, that the long run, he's definitely had it set up for that. He's actually trying to close in on Tim Williams for that 3rd place position. He's going to be able to have a battle with him at this point. And, again, we saw him start near the back, now finds his way up here. It's fun to watch these drivers that have got their car set up. They don't necessarily cut through the field, but they do slowly make their way up, and that it's coming, and there's just nothing you can do about it. Because if you're Williams, once you see that 11 in your rearview mirror, that he's got a faster car. There's almost nothing you can do to defend other than making your car as wide as the track is. And as we see, down to the inside goes the 11 to try and get the 3rd place position, and into turn 3 rather. Looks like he'll get him clear.
So Matt White will move up into the podium for the first time tonight. And I can't help but think back to Darlington when Matt White finished 2nd place to one of the Veterans of Foreign War Cup Series drivers, Vincent Arthur, and was so close to being able to clinch a playoff spot. If he wins here tonight, we're talking about these guys like Helton, Santini, Williams, who could lock themselves up spots in the playoffs, the next round of the playoffs here this evening with a victory. If Matt White goes to victory lane, that means that there's a potential only 2 drivers are going to lock themselves into the next round through wins.
Man, that's going to put a lot of these drivers in a tough position. And, once you get to, especially like you said, if he wins tonight, then yeah, it definitely does add a lot more pressure to not only Santini and Helton, but other drivers who haven't gotten a win yet. I want to make a quick note. Speaking of drivers who have not had speaking of drivers that have a bad run tonight, the 18 of Tom Laneville has just retired that car, so something was amiss on that car. I just saw him pull onto pit road and park it, so tough break for the 18. He slapped the wall awful hard out of turn 4, and something must not have been right with that car. It might have taken longer than it was worth to repair, so tough break for the 18 again. But Seth, we kind of find ourselves in a position where we're just kind of waiting for White to get around Santini and Helton. And to your point, putting pressure on these drivers to make it in via wins. Some of these drivers that are running back in through 3rd on through 8th in the standings, minus Stevens, you got Mayer, Bowers, Williams, who's up at the front of the field at the moment. I'm sorry, not the front of the field, but Williams running towards the middle of the pack. You've got Whitaker and Roy. Those drivers, it puts a lot of pressure on them because if say Helton or Santini won tonight, then that we would know that one of them are making it in. But if they don't win, then there's a slot that is going to be taken up by a driver that you thought could have been already dealt with tonight.
Yeah, and there's two guys back here just at the latter portion of the top five that really, they're having runs that they need to have here this evening. Tim Williams, yes, he's been up here inside of the top five, mostly the top three for the good portion of the beginning of this race, but he's not even safe. He may be sixth in the playoff stands right now, but he's only 4 points ahead of the cut line, so he needs to have a good run here as he had a rather dismal performance last week at Bristol. And right behind him, you've got Joshua Gordon in that 93. You mentioned not necessarily in a must-win situation, but he's got a lot of ground to make up. I can't help but think back to last week at Bristol, where it was the elimination race for the Veterans of Foreign War drivers. James Love had missed out on one of the races of that first round, found himself in such a hole that he could not dig himself out of it. He had the potentiality with about a top five run at Bristol to be able to advance, but it's so difficult when you've got pressure on yourself like that to have consistent runs at tracks that are maybe going to be difficult for you. Joshua Gordon here tonight, if he finishes top five, that's going to be a great first step, but you just look at minus 32 points, and that's not from him to the points lead. That's from him to the cutoff line. It just seems like that might be too insurmountable a mountain to climb, especially with the fact we don't have that many cars in the field tonight.
No, and there's not a whole lot of positions you can make up to get to points. And when you're that far back from the cut line, like you mentioned, that's not to the leader, that's the cut line. So when you're that far back, it does seem like it's too far out of reach, but don't give up hope. You still got a chance, even though that we only have 14 cars running on the racetrack right now. If Gordon gets this finish or gets this top five that he's been running in, then, it puts a dent. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that you'll have a chance next week, but at least you'll say that I did my best. And when we roll into the cutoff race, then he'll be in a better position to, if something does happen, then he can maybe capitalize on it. And so we're looking through the field. We got a gaggle of cars back here, 6 on through 9th. There's Longacre, Bowers, Mayer, and Stevens. A lot of these drivers, aside from Stevens, are still looking to make sure that they stay in the playoff hunt rather than fall out of it. And they're all running right nose to tail with each other. Barry Stevens, like we mentioned, doesn't have that issue because he's already locked in, but a lot of these other drivers maybe battling for position, trying to say, yep, that's me. I'm going to be in front of you, so that way I'm going to make it harder on you to get into the next round.
Yeah, Evan Longacre has now worked his way up to 6th. It looks like the Colleague Racing cars, at least 2 of them, the 11 and the 10, really good on the long run. Carson Bowers, on the other hand, the third entry out of Colleagues Racing, is actually fallen back to 9th position, so I'm not sure if maybe he's running a similar setup to his 2 teammates or if he was set up for the short run, but he's starting to fade outside of the top 10. And, for Evan Longacre now up here in the 6th position, this would move him up into the top 8. The question is, who is he replacing? Is he replacing Kevin Roy, or is he replacing the absent Chris Whitaker?
At this point, I think it'd be Whitaker, just based on how many cars are in the field. And the fact that he didn't take the start, although Roy is not doing particularly well either. He's running in the 10th place position, and in 10th place, even though it's still a top 10, when you consider that it's 10th out of 15 cars that took the green flag tonight, that's you're in the start of the second or the last quarter of the field. So you got to think that it's probably going to be Whitaker that he jumps, because Roy is still running and he'll be able to get points tonight, but Whitaker won't. So I would assume that it would be Whitaker that he'd jump, but still it's a little too early to tell because we've got a long way to go. And as we all know, that anything could happen in these races, and we've seen just about everything happen in these races.
Absolutely. As we just saw, 3rd place Matt White, he had reeled in the top 2, but might have used up a lot of his tire getting up here because he just got the wall pretty well there off of turn 4. And now you see David Santini kind of backing off from the 8 of Logan Helton just moments ago. He was up on Helton's back bumper as if he was going to make a move. And I think that was more so of the fact that Santini knew he was going to be feeling the pressure of the 11. Now that Matt White has backed off, Santini's been able to back off a little bit and kind of just hang back, get into a bit of a rhythm, and continue to save his stuff.
Yeah, and it's about that time where we're starting to see these tires get into critical mode, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some cars come down pit road, not because they're low on fuel, but because the tires have fallen off so much. I'm a little bit nervous for that 11 car, though. He doesn't seem like anything's wrong with the car, but when we saw Laneville hit the wall earlier on in the race, it took him all the way down to the end of the running order, and then he actually had to retire the car. It doesn't look like the 11's been slowed down any at all, but too many of those, and we could see a very similar situation to what happened to the 18.
Yeah, I'm not seeing nearly a significant damage on the 11 of Matt White as we saw on the right side of Tom Laneville when he got into the wall. Might be some damage around maybe that right front quarter panel, but you're right. It hasn't seemed to affect him that much, at least for the moment. You talked about drivers hitting pit road. We're starting to see the cycle begin. Matt Knight was on pit road a lap ago. Here comes Brandon Andrews in the 24.
And it is time. Some of these drivers thinking that maybe my tires are a little bit cooked and we're going to get them replaced and see what I can do with them. 24 is all by himself on pit road at the moment. The 01 just came off of pit road, so the cycle has gone into full swing. How long do you think it's going to be till we see these leaders come down? Because the 99 has fallen off significantly. The 8 of Helton has kind of scampered away, and that's bringing these second on through fourth drivers right up nose to tail with each other.
I'm not really sure what the fuel window is for these drivers, but if they can reach lap 50, I almost think that might be where they would try and split this race maybe into 2 pit stops, 50, 100, and then make it to the conclusion at lap 150. We'll see if they stretch it as far as lap 50. If they go that far, I think maybe a 2-tire pit stop, or a two pit stop race, I should say, might be the best strategy, especially for these race leaders. I'm not so certain about what the strategy of the 24 of Brandon Andrews is, because he came in pit road around lap 40, so I don't know if maybe he's banking on a 3-stop race or if he maybe can make it on just one more pit stop as well.
If he's done enough fuel saving, if he's done some calculations based on how much his telemetry is telling him, that might be what he's trying to do, is just ride for as long as he can and then one stop. The thing is, though, that you lose so much time when you make that first stop, and by the time that you're running about midway through the race, then your tires will be screaming at you. We've seen the lap times fall off so quickly, even though that we've not been on that long of a run, all things considered. If you try to stretch that out to 60, 70 laps, that's going to be pushing the tire health of these drivers. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone that tries that. We might see a blowout in one of these tires, and that could bring out a yellow, and that might benefit somebody, though.
Man, Tim Williams with a near moment off of turn 4 as that car nearly snapped around on him. And I mentioned the fact that, I didn't see drivers in practice really dealing with a loose sensation. That's because maybe not many of them were practicing long runs. It looks like as this run has gone on, that rear grip has gone away, and a lot of these drivers are fighting their race cars now. I think Matt White nearly went around off of turn 2 a couple of laps ago as well.
And that's something that we also did consider when we were thinking about the tire strategy and the track conditions, is maybe these drivers are starting to get too loose to handle their cars. And something that I didn't really think about is now the 93 doesn't look like he's too happy, as he kind of looks like he washed up a little bit through turns 1 and 2. So this track has gone through some changes throughout the night. We're seeing a bit of a bigger groove being made out in the racing surface. We started the night with pretty much a 1 to 1.5 groove track, and now there's cars running in the middle. There's cars running a little bit on the inside as someone dives down for pit road. I believe that was, I couldn't tell who that was.
99, David Santini from second position hitting pit lanes. This is about 3 laps sooner than I expected to see most of our leaders hit pit road, but maybe the fuel window is open here. Maybe these guys are able to go about 55, maybe even 60 laps. So come down, get the fresh tires. I mean, you brought up the point, the difference maybe between old tires to fresh tires. How much time are you losing? Well, if we use Logan Helton as an example, his fastest lap was nearly a 31 flat. He's now running 33.1. So there's about 2 seconds to be gained with the fresher tires.
2 seconds, but how much are you willing to sacrifice that for fuel runs? Because if the fuel window is 50 to 55 laps, with the 99 coming down to pit road this early on in the race, how is he going to be on fuel later on? Because now his next stop should be around, if he goes the same distance, his next stop should be around lap 90. Be lap 90 when he makes his next stop, and that's still 60 laps before the end of the race. And if you can't make it that far, then you're going to be really straining your fuel, as a lot of drivers on pit road now, basically most of the leaders on pit road, as they start to get their service. So this might turn into a fuel strategy race.
Williams, White, Meyer, Longacre, and Gregory were in the last lap. Second place at the time. Joshua Gordon, as well as last week's winner, Barry Stevens, pitting this time. That's going to leave 3 drivers that are still out there: Logan Helton, Kevin Roy, and Aaron Tyner. I think I know what the 4 strategy is here. I think he's planning on staying out 1 lap longer than Logan Helton with the hopes of maybe getting that lap-led bonus point, just based off the fact that he comes into this race that cutoff line driver.
Yeah, get a little bit more padding going into next week. That's definitely not a bad strategy. That all depends, though, if Helton pits before Roy does, and if Roy can even make it that far before Helton has to pit. We've seen that Roy, that car, as you see, the old tires versus new tires, there goes the 11, just flying by the 4 car. And, I don't know how much longer Roy can afford to stay out here, because his lap times are definitely much slower than those leaders are, as no one has come down to pit road of the drivers that have stayed out yet.
Logan Helton just completed the 50th lap and did not come to pit lane. Right now, he has everyone but the top 3 all 1 lap down, so maybe this is his strategy. I mean, Logan came into this race a total of 18 points ahead of the cut line to advance into the round of 8. Maybe trying to see if he can play the long con on fuel strategy here, maybe trap everyone a lap down. As soon as I say that, you can see the exhaust pipes there flaring as he's going to bring his cystic fibrosis Toyota to pit road.
Yeah, he's had enough of those tires, and now he's put himself in a position where he can stop it to the end very comfortably. This being his first, and the next one will be around lap 100. Kevin Roy stayed out. He's going to lead that lap, so a bonus point for the 4 team. They'll have that going into next week, and if he can get a good consistent run here tonight, then that 4 car might be advancing just based on his finish tonight, and hopefully have a consistent run next week. But Roy is the last to pit, as Tyner hasn't come down pit road either. He's the slowest car on the racetrack. He might be coming down soon, but he's running in second place position at the moment, as the former leader Helton has come back out, but he's gotten leaped by Centeni and Williams.
Yes, he has. So you can see how those fresh tires have helped David Centini. And I might be a little bit worried right here if I'm Logan Helton, because we saw how Centini was able to keep pace with Logan Helton through the entirety of that first green flag run. Now Centini's enjoying about, nearly 4 seconds between himself and that 8 machine. I mean, Logan Helton, unless he's got a car that's a little bit better on the short run, he's going to have a lot of ground to have to make up now on Centini when they get up to this next round, potentially the final round of green flag pit stops. And I just want to quickly touch as well, you were talking about Kevin Roy there in the 4. Right now, I think the one driver he has to worry about in his point situation is that 93 of Joshua Gordon. He's the only one that has shown any type of pace so far that could maybe knock Kevin Roy out of the top 8. You already mentioned Evan Longacre having a good run. Well, he's knocking out Chris Whitaker. So if Roy can just keep himself ahead of Gregory, Gordon, and Andrews, yeah, he could find himself in a very good position by the time we get to the Charlotte Roval next week.
Indeed, he will. And with that bonus point happening, he definitely did. But he's fallen down the order quite a bit. He's actually now into 10th. He's going to fall into 11th, I think, by the end of this run as he's gotten out. The 16 is actually coming up with Carson Bowers. So Roy's going to find himself a long ways back. And that's the danger that you run when you stay out on old tires. You're losing a lot of time, 2 seconds per lap. And the thing, though, that we have to keep remembering is that based on the fuel run, we've seen that the fuel window is anywhere between, I'll say 48 to 50 realistically. But we see a lot of these drivers come down on lap 46, 47. They're not going to make, if this race goes all the way green to the end, they're not going to make it to lap 150 without having to do another stop for at least a splash. And drivers such as Helton and Roy, they don't have that problem. They're able to run their race. They can make it all the way to the end comfortably at this point. So what are we going to see at the end of this race? Are we going to see the majority of the field have to come down, make a third stop, and get more fuel, and have Helton and Roy just run away with this first and second?
Well, if I'm looking at it right now, it looks like the 51 of Aaron Tyner was the guy we were able to kind of use as a database of how far these drivers could go. He went 55 laps there on that run. Logan Helton, we saw come to pit road after lap 50 was completed. His teammate David Centini came to pit road only 5 laps before that. So I think that if the 51 was able to make it 55 laps, Centini should be good to make it on just one more pit stop.
Okay, if that's the case, then yeah, everything's fine. But it was looking kind of sketchy for some of these drivers. I can imagine the crew chiefs were like scratching their heads, figuring out what's the best strategy for this. And definitely looks like short pitting is going to be the way to go here, though, because we've seen Helton, especially with that thing, he was leading the race when the stop started, and now Tim Williams and David Santini are pretty far ahead of him. As it looks like that Santini's actually putting. Never mind. They're just running right up with each other. The 0-1 is between the 8 and the 2 leaders. The 2 leaders are in a bit of a dogfight at the moment as Williams on the outside of Santini trying to make a run. Do you think he goes for the lead, or do you think he's content to run second?
I think he wants to go for the lead for one reason. He has not led a lap here tonight. He wants that lap-led bonus point. And we saw these two battling side by side a couple of times for second place earlier on. Now they're battling for the top spot. And look at Tim Williams way up the track into that third groove, and he's going to make it work. What a pass by the 19. That might be something these drivers want to put back in their memory bank for later on in this race.
Yeah, that turn through turns 1 and 2, there is that third groove up there that you can use, and if you can make it work, then you can see just how much he's gotten to run, because he was able to keep the speed through 1 and 2, and that's carried throughout the rest of the lap, and now he's pulled himself about a 2 or 3 car length advantage over Santini. I don't think this battle is going to go away anytime soon, though, because I think that Santini's got a really fast car and able to keep pace with Williams, but that lap lead is going to be really big for the 19 team as go into next week's race. Every point counts, and give an extra one to the 19 team.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Williams, if you look at his second half of the regular season, it was just a whole combination of misfortunes, getting involved in wrecks that weren't of his making, or being competitive for most of the race and just not being able to close out the deal when he was run up in the top 5 or the top 10. For those that are looking at our scoring right now and probably wondering, where is the 11 of Matt White? He was up there in the top 5 when those pit stops began. Well, the 11 car got hit with a speeding penalty there under that round of green flag pit stops. Had to serve a pass-through penalty. Finds himself now 26 seconds behind the race leaders, back in the 12th position. And that just says to me as well, if this thing continues to go green, these drivers have to make that final pit stop under green flag conditions. Execution is going to be so important.
Yeah, you got to get on, get off, and not speed, as we've seen how much it's hurt White. And that's going to be one of the things that these drivers are going to have to think about. Is it going to be extra pressure to make sure you get in and get out without speeding? And, the pressure on the pit crew as well. They got to make sure that their stop is extra quick for them to get their driver back out on the racetrack and back into the fight before all the other ones. And, Seth, we've seen a lot of races where, it does come down to a last pit stop that puts you in a good track position in order to make up positions. How critical will this last pit stop be if it is under green, or if we have a caution? What does that throw a monkey wrench in? How much does that change the strategy depending on when the yellow comes out?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I mean, if we end up having, let's say, that final round of green flag pit stops take place around between lap 100 to lap 105, and we have a caution come out between then and the checkered flag, I don't know if any of these drivers have enough data to maybe realize maybe a 2-tire strategy might be the way to go, or if all these drivers would not be comfortable doing that and would go with the 4 tires. I mean, there's obviously probably going to be some gamblers of drivers that are down near the cut line as far as the playoffs are concerned, and also drivers that aren't even battling in the playoffs, might be out there just trying to take a checkered flag. They might do something outside the box, but still, the field really spread out, so the likelihood of a caution coming out pretty slim to none. So I think it's really all going to come down to that final green flag pit stop.
They're going to be thinking about this last stop all race long until they get to it, which we should see around lap 100. So they have a long time to think about this stop. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see some drivers try to short pit it again, knowing that they can make it 55 laps. Lap 95 is where you could realistically pit and make it to the end of the race without any issue on fuel. It's going to be interesting to see if some of these drivers elect to stay out longer, maybe see if those tires can last a little bit extra time. And because we've seen just how critical the tires have been tonight, and even though that we have cooler temps, those tires still falling off as quickly as we see during the daytime.
The driver I'm going to be very interested to watch here when we approach that second round of pit stops is going to be that 8 of Logan Helton, because he kind of got caught out from losing the lead, falling back to third position. Now he is starting to gain quite a bit of time on the top two because he's got the fresher tires by about 5 to 6 laps. But he was the leader, dropped way back behind David Santini. I almost wonder if Logan Helton, since he was one of the drivers that stretched it the furthest of our race leaders, if he might be one of those drivers that might think about doing the short pit strategy here on this second round of pit stops.
If he does, then that'll definitely be an off strategy, and he might be able to make that one work. And we've seen him make it work this time. If this was a run to speaking of run, there was a severe checkup on the 19, and that's actually going to bring Helton into this mix early. To the lead goes the 8 to the inside, and now this landscape changes completely.
Tim Williams trying to get back up to the outside as Helton kind of started sliding up, had to lift. That's going to give the advantage to the outside of Tim Williams. Going to try and pinch that 8 car down. We got 3 Supras up here battling for the race lead. Close quarter racing off of 4. I think there might have been a bit of contact.
It's a little early on to race like that, but Helton wants the lead back, and he's taking it. And now Williams is going to fall back into the third place position. And we were wondering, what was short pitting going to do for that 8 car? Well, he managed to claw his way back up, and if this was a run to lap 150, he'd be the leader at this stage of the race, and he would be able to run away with it, I think, because that car's had a fast car all night. At least he'd be able to put himself into this position, so maybe that's what he's going to think about doing is short pit, or maybe even stretch it, see if he can make it all the way, and we've seen that he can get back to the front. Now he's pulling a big advantage over Santini as the two of Santini and Williams keep battling.
Yeah, it's so much fun to watch when drivers come to pit road and watch the telemetry based on the amount of laps on their tires. Just based off of Logan Helton's tires alone, we were able to gather that you can gain 0.3 of a second per lap on drivers that you have 5 lap fresher tires than, because that's what he was doing lap after lap to get up here to the top 2 and eventually take the race lead. So Helton, who started on the pole, led a good portion of the beginning of this race, now back out in front over David Santini, Tim Williams, Joshua Gordon, and Jeffrey Meyer. We're a couple of laps away from the halfway point here tonight at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So far tonight, we've been clean and green. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break. You won't miss a thing. We're going to remain Flatout Racing Network side by side.
Since the VFW was founded, their mission was really to look out for the veterans community, to make sure that our nation upholds its promise to really care for the service member, the veteran, and his or her family. There are several ways that the VFW fights for veterans today. The top services include disability claims assistance, advocacy on Capitol Hill and with the Department of Veterans Affairs. We also offer scholarship opportunities, and then also volunteerism. For me personally, when I came back from Iraq, my life experience was drastically different from those around me, and the veterans of foreign wars really spoke to me. The reason I would encourage veterans who have served overseas today to join the VFW is because this is your organization. The VFW is for veterans. Every generation, a new generation of leaders steps up in the veterans of foreign wars and fights for the veterans community.
The Veterans of Foreign Wars. No one does more for veterans. For more information on the VFW, go to ahctv.com/sacrifice.
Most everyone involved in sim racing always wants that edge or even make the experience a little bit better, or in this case, a little bit more in-depth. Enter Iracing iFlag. iFlag is a simulation signal box with software designed by Peter Vostro. When you are behind the wheel in iRacing, your eyes are looking down the track or maybe even in the rear or side view mirrors. You may not notice or even hear when the caution comes out, when your car is damaged, or if you get black flagged, or even notice the car beside you. Yes, iFlag will point out the signs and tell you where that car is. It just makes iRacing more real and can help you become a better driver. We also offer iRacing iFlag Digital Pit Box. This small box is a great addition to any sim rig. With only 3.5 inches wide, it gives you all the information you need, including how many laps completed, how much fuel you will need to finish, what lap you need to pit on, laps so your fuel is empty, as well as weather and track conditions. It also switches when you come down pit road for more information, including what lap you're pitting under, tire wear, laps on tires, fuel average, and much, much more. To see more info, check us out today at iracingiflag.com.
Welcome back to Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We've crossed the threshold here tonight in the second playoff race for the Rapid Fire Pizza National Series. Logan Helton out in front over David Santini and Tim Williams. We've been focusing quite a bit here tonight on the cutoff line where Kevin Roy currently sits in the 8th position. We're looking at the 93 of Joshua Gordon. You know, we talked, Anthony, about this not necessarily being a must-win situation. However, I kind of think this is the race that Joshua Gordon really needs to win just based off of his numbers at road courses this past season with us heading towards the Charlotte Roval next week. He's only taken part in 2 of the 4 road course races during the regular season, and in those 2 races, he finished 9th and 10th. I just don't think that's going to be able to cut it for him to advance into the playoffs. So I really almost think that tonight is the night that 93 needs to find victory lane to avoid any bad luck next week at the Charlotte Roval.
Yeah, especially when you have a track record at road courses such as that, then yeah, it does, like you said, does become a must win. And I mean, where he's running now, 4th place, is nothing really bad. There's nothing that we're discrediting for this 4th place position, but given the position he's in points, yeah, he definitely needs to have a good run. Definitely a win would make him feel better going into Charlotte. And you know, we keep talking about the Charlotte road course. It's a different type of road course altogether that these drivers have raced on, because you look back at the road courses that they've raced on previously in this season. You look back and you see Mid-Ohio, you see the Indianapolis road course, you see Road America. The only road course that they've been on so far that's even mirrored anything close to what we're going to be at is going to be the Indy road course, which was, of course, you drive down the front stretch backwards, basically. And you know, if you have any disdain for road courses, as Gordon's track record shows, then, you know, like you mentioned, it is going to be win tonight and feel comfortable. I don't think that he's totally out of the woods if he doesn't win. If he can string a good run next week, then maybe he'll feel like he can get in, but he's going to have a good qualifying run, because we've seen at the Charlotte road course that qualifying definitely prevails when that race starts, because there are passing zones, but a lot of the turns are high speed, and you know, once you qualify, it's basically where you're going to finish, unless you have a bit more gusto than the other drivers around you.
Yeah, definitely all about track position. We actually have had another driver go back to the garage area. Matt White has taken his car back behind the wall, and it looks like he may have had a little bit more of an issue just than being way back there due to a pit road penalty, but he will be finishing the 14th position. And, you know, a thing we got to remember, too, is when these drivers were shown the schedule at the beginning of the year, they looked at the Charlotte Roval and they were thinking of the old configuration. Since then, of course, NASCAR had a new configuration with the Charlotte Roval, and iRacing put it in. So these drivers not only having to deal with a much deeper chicane on the NASCAR back straightaway there, but also having to deal with a little bit different of a configuration with the chicane up near the front stretch as well.
Yeah, it's going to play into them in their minds. You've already muscle memoried in how to run the old road course. Now you got to relearn those 2 sections, which, you know, 90% of the track is still the same, but you still have those 2 that, at least when I'm racing racetracks, if we'll take another racetrack that's seen a lot of changes over the years. When we race at Singapore for the Singapore Grand Prix and a number of different platforms, there's always one turn that became kind of famous throughout that entire sect of racing. It was basically a death chicane, and I forgot what the term for it was, but it was a quick left, right, left, and you basically had to run it straight. That got reprofiled several times. It started out as the triple chicane, then it became basically like a single chicane, then it became just a left-hander, then it became almost a 90-degree turn at one point. And every time that you would race on the new version of it, it would throw you off, and you would, in the back of your mind, set yourself up for that particular turn that you had known from the last previous version. Now, you got to relearn that turn, and that could throw off your rhythm throughout the rest of the track. And at Charlotte, it's going to be no different. It's going to throw off rhythm because road course racing is all about rhythm. You start the lap and you go through the checklist: turn 1, turn 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're in your mind, you're hitting those turns the exact same way every single time, and if one of them is even remotely off, then it throws off your entry to the next turn. It throws off your rhythm. You have to get that rhythm back, but they're going to have an hour's time to practice, and these drivers, they're going to be hitting the simulators, trying to run the new layout as much as they can before they get there. And especially those drivers who are on the edge of the cut line, as Gordon is. If he doesn't win tonight, then you better believe that he's going to try and practice as much as he possibly can.
Yeah, and I really don't think that cut line is going to, have maybe only 1 or 2 drivers. I think we're going to have about 3-4 drivers down near that cut line, even heading into next week at the Charlotte Roval. Evan Longacre came into this race 2 points behind the cut line. He's right now in 7th. The guy who he was behind, Kevin Roy, right behind him in 8th. And Roger Gregory, who was 6 points back behind the cut line, is right now in 9th. So, they're all still running in close proximity to each other. Something says to me we're going to have some pretty good nail-biting battles when we get to Charlotte Roval next week, as I believe, as things stand right now, Longacre and Roy currently hold the final 2 playoff spots with where they're running.
Yeah, and that's going to be some pretty good momentum from them. And it's all really going to be depending on how aggressive you're going to be to get into the round of 8. Because, being that you can drive it in deep in some of those turns and maybe try to get around your opponents, how much do you think the bumpers are going to be used when we get there? Because if it's really close, I wouldn't put it past some of these cutoff drivers that, to get in, I might have to dump you in the backstretch chicane.
Yeah, there's a lot of places there where you can close up on somebody really quick if you can drive it in deep to one of those braking zones. So I agree with you. You mentioned the fact that Charlotte Roval, the only track they've been to that's somewhat similar is the Indianapolis Road Course. We saw bumpers and even doors being used there. So yeah, definitely could see those scenarios, especially with it being an elimination race with some drivers making some desperate moves. We mentioned the fact that these drivers, about the furthest they can stretch it is about 55 laps. If these drivers wanted to come to pit road the moment the fuel window opens, that would be somewhere in the next 6 laps. We'll see if we have any takers, as the 4 of Kevin Roy is already on pit road.
That's cutting it close. I don't know if I would necessarily cut it this close, but Roy might know something that we don't know, and he's on pit road at the moment. He's going to get a 4-tire stop. You almost have to get 4-tire stops during this race, as we've seen the tire fall off, but we'll have to see what the 4 car does, because he's putting himself in a pretty tight situation.
Yeah, he's pitting with 62 laps to go, and as we said, the only driver that we've seen be able to stretch it the furthest was 55 laps, so this may be a bit of a Hail Mary call there by Kevin Roy, but I'm kind of a little confused about this, because he was running in the 8th position. He's already got a bonus point for a lap led, so it's not necessarily like he's in a desperation mode at this current point in time. But again, maybe he knows something that we don't know, but this is going to put him now 2 laps down to race leader Logan Helton. He needs this thing to go green to the end now, because he cannot afford a caution to come out and trap him 2 laps down.
Definitely not. As we say that the 24 has just come down pit road, Brandon Andrews. So that's also a little bit early. I don't know if you can save that much fuel. Because for Roy, it's going to be 6 or 7 laps that you have to save. For Andrews, it's going to be 6 or 5 or 6 laps that you have to save. I don't know if this is the right call for these drivers to make, but again, there might be something we don't know.
Well, I think for Brandon Andrews, he and Matt Knight, who pitted a couple of laps ago, I think they were forced to come to pit road, because those 2 came to pit lane back on lap 40. So they would have had to have pitted somewhere around either before or at lap 95. So I think this is a regularly scheduled stop for Brandon Andrews, because he had to come to pit road. But now it's the big question mark of whether or not he's going to be able to stretch it about 58 to 59 laps to make it to the checkered flag.
Yeah, and he's going to be biting his nails all the way to the end of this race trying to do that now. And No one else so far electing to come down pit road as the 24 enters back onto the racetrack. He's also on the same lap as the 01, so that shows you how far behind he's fallen. But he's got fresh tires, so you know that 24 car is going to be bad fast for the next 10 or so laps, and he might be able to make up some time on the racetrack, maybe get himself into a position where he could save some fuel to try and stretch it to the end of the race. But we're still waiting for these other drivers to come down pit road. Realistically, you have to get to at least lap 95 in order to do that based on Matt Knight's run. So I have to just wait and see what these drivers elect to do.
This is going to be interesting, too, because, when we ended up having the first round of green flag pit stops, we had about 4 or 5 drivers all up their nose to tail. So it was really close as to who was going to be able to get the advantage. If you look now at the intervals, Helton's got 4.5 seconds back to Santini, 6 seconds back to Tim Williams, 8 back to Gordon, 11 back to Meyer. I mean, there's about 2 to 3 second separation between every single one of our drivers up here inside of the top 8. So, yes, there is ground to be gained on fresher tires, but for some of these guys that are back 6th, 7th, 8th, are they out of it just based on how far back they are right now?
At this point, it might be a little too far away to make up. We've seen how Helton, Santini, Williams are so fast even after or even on older tires. So those drivers, they've got to not only make this next pit stop work, but they also have to make up that much time in order to get up there. I don't know if we're going to see these drivers up there to battle for the lead amongst themselves. Absolutely. Speaking of side-by-side battles, Evan Longacre and Roger Gregory in a bit of a battle right now for that 7th position. As these drivers who are still running very much competitively for points, they're going to not want to battle each other too heavily, as something is up with the 10. He slowed down a lot through that turn.
I think that's the fresher tires of Matt Knight. You're just seeing the difference of speed between 12 lap old tires as opposed to 48 lap old tires. I think Longacre is just saying, all right, go on ahead.
Yeah, and I did confuse the 01. I thought that was Roger Gregory running right behind him. It actually wasn't, so there's actually no battle going on right now. But still, for those drivers who are running middle of the pack, like you said, it's battling amongst themselves, definitely going to keep going on. Battling for the lead without a yellow might be a little out of reach.
Well, here we go. David Santini, I saw his pace was backing off quite a bit that lap as he's bringing the 99 to pit road. So he's going to be pitting with 53 laps to go. Based off what we saw, that is within the fuel window to be able to make it the rest of the way. And again, Santini relying on the short pit strategy. We'll see if Helton's going to bite and come to pit road this time. Nope, he's going to stay out an extra lap.
And now it really becomes, when do you pit? How fresh do you want your tires at the end of the race? Because at this point, you can basically pick and choose where you want to pit for your tires. And with Santini coming down now, he's going to have a few lap older tires than the rest of the field. So it's all about whether or not he can make up the time on the track now. Mayer's also on pit road. We also see the 19 of Williams on pit road this lap.
And for Logan Helton right now, this just gives him such a huge advantage because he's able to call his shot, what he wants to do, since he's got the strongest car and he's out there in the clean air. He's forcing everybody else to try something different.
Yeah, and that's basically what it comes down to is, force them to make the call, and then I'll make my move based off of what they do. Is Longacre also on pit road? The 78's coming to pit road. That's Barry Stevens. He's running in 3rd place at the time on pit road. Anyone else coming in this lap? Yes, they are. Here comes the 12 onto pit road. That's Roger Gregory.
Joshua Gordon just ahead of them from 2nd place is on pit road. So most of our top 10 have hit pit lane here, closing in on 50 laps to go, but not necessarily stretching it as far as 50 laps to go, as Logan Helton continues to stay out. Carson Bowers has now moved up to 2nd, even though he just got put a lap down to Logan Helton. He right now would be in the free pass position, and then everybody else inside of the top 10, they have all been to pit lane. So we saw what Logan Helton was able to do on the fresh tires, running down David Santini and Tim Williams for 2nd and eventually the race lead. We'll see if he'll be able to do it again. You mentioned if we use the second, that 2nd green flag run as kind of a template here for the final 50 laps, it is an advantage to the 8.
Yeah, even though he's staying out much longer than everyone now, he's got the entire field lapped at the moment, and we have seen that he can run them down, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he's doing. He's going to make it as far as he can. That way he can run as hard as he wants to, not have to conserve anything whatsoever, and be able to reel back in the leaders, which if it cycles around based on what we saw last time, will be Centeni and Williams leading in the being first and second place. We'll have to wait and see, as there's a big hornet's nest back here by the 38 car. That's Mayer and Gordon. They're running side by side. It looks like that he's actually going across Roy. That was Roy that he just made the pass on.
Not sure what happened with the 78 of Barry Stevens. We know he was already on pit road. I don't know if he missed his stall or something, because he was back on pit road again. Probably very happy that he has that win in the bank to advance to the round of 8, as Logan Helton now on pit lane from the race lead. Of course, Logan Helton riding a bit of momentum, finished with a nice 15th place finish last night in the California Clash, the iRacing special event, and trying to see if he can pick up a checkered flag here 24 hours later.
Yeah, he's got that momentum coming in from that race, going into this race, and I have to see if he can carry that into a victory, as he's pulled into a stall for what should be his final stop of the race. See if that crew can get him back out on the racetrack as quickly as possible. And we're just looking at the relative. The 99 is coming up really quick, and I think he is going to pass him by the time they get out, although that was a very fast stop by the 18 or the 8 team. So that might be enough to keep him within the fight as he's back out on the racetrack. Let's see if I think the 99 is going to get around him, but the gap is definitely not as big as it was on the first round of stops.
First round of stops, it was about 4.5 seconds from Centeni back to Helton. I'd be shocked if it's 20 car lengths right now, as Helton on those fresher tires is going to be closing up very quickly on David Centeni. And now I think if you're Logan Helton, maybe you're hoping that this thing goes green to the end, because he's got the fresher tires. He's obviously got the long run speed. Don't really know how these BJ McLeod Motorsports cars are set up for the short run. There might be somebody back there that might be banking on a late race caution and set their car up accordingly for the short run, but we'll have to wait and see, as so far we are about 45 laps away from running a complete green flag race here at Las Vegas.
It's been a competitive green flag race too, and we have to keep in mind that these drivers, they don't go out with the intent to run into each other. They want to keep these races as clean as possible. So an all green flag race, it really gets to show you who's the best of the best in terms of just pure driving ability. And right now we're seeing that the top three have easily pulled out the biggest advantage over anyone in the rest of the field, as they are running a good 5 seconds ahead of fourth place Jeffrey Mayer. And it really does show you just how good the strategy is, how good their driving ability is, and we're seeing them continue to pull the advantage, as David Centeni is he's getting closed in by Helton, and that car is wicked fast, having much newer tires.
About a car length and a half, now a car length, now half a car length, as he really closed it up there off of turn 2. Helton will drive to the inside of David Centeni, looking to take the lead back. Tim Williams right up there in the conversation as well, but I don't know if he's got a strong enough car to get up there and get around Logan Helton for this lead. He'll certainly try and challenge Centeni for second.
And now, just like that, these top three are right nose to tail with each other going down into turn 1. And we've gone the entire race, and these three have never left each other's sides. And I just think that Helton's got too fast of a car, like you said, for them to really do any damage to him. But Centeni has shown that he's slowed down a little bit. Williams might be able to take that second place position. And again, we were talking about earlier how it's kind of a one-upsmanship between Centeni and Helton getting into the next round of the championship. Even though they're pretty much already locked in based on points, it is a one-upsmanship to confirm who can get locked in first. And right now, it's all Helton.
Helton has now got about a half second between himself and this battle for second. You've also got Carson Bowers there in the 16. He's probably the one guy in the field that would love to see a caution come out, because he is currently in the free pass position, 9th place, 1 lap down, as he's going to battle here with second and third place drivers Centeni and Williams. And you see Williams drifting the car up there to that second line. We saw him utilize that earlier to get around Centeni for what was then the race lead, trying to do it here again, especially with the freshest tires possible.
Yeah, he's going to try to put his car in multiple positions, see what line works, see what he can do. And We talk about the 16. Bowers has just passed those two. He's got fresher tires than those two drivers do, so he's kind of more on par with how Helton is. As Helton's got 6-lap-old tires, and Bowers, one of the last cars to pit, also is only on 8-lap-old tires. But as these drivers continue to battle for the second place position, we're getting into crunch time. What do you have to do to set yourself up for the final run? What mentality do you have to be in, knowing that we only have about 40 laps to go?
I think obviously for Helton, the goal is clear, and that's win the race. For guys back here like Santini, Williams, and Meyer, second, third, and fourth, all three of those drivers came into this race running really well in the point standing. Santini was obviously the highest in points without a victory here in this round. Meyer was fourth in the standings. Tim Williams was sixth in points. He was the one that was maybe more of the critical position, only 4 points ahead of that cutoff line. But all three are going to have great points nights here this evening if they continue to run where they are. So I think their goal is to just maintain. And I'm looking at Joshua Gordon back here in that fifth position, and it's looking almost like a must-win situation for him next week at the Charlotte Roval, because yes, he's up here inside of the top 5, but the two drivers that he needed to have bad luck here this evening, Kevin Roy and Evan Longacre, they're running in 6th and 7th right behind him, so he's not going to gain a lot of points on either of those drivers.
Not at all, and that's not at all what he wanted to have happen tonight. He had to get up towards the front. He had to have Roy and Longacre, as you said. They had to have them maybe down somewhere close to 10th, 11th, maybe even as far back as 4th and 5th, 14th and 15th, in order for them to have a shot. As I say that, and we just have another retiree from the race. Aaron Tyner has just parked that 51. Had enough here tonight. That was one of the slower cars on the track. Was running around the last place position all night long, and has decided to call it a night here. But for other the drivers that are again in a must-win situation going into next week, with Gordon being in a must-win situation, do you think that Chris Whitaker is going to have any shot next week? If he does show up for the race and he does take the start, he's also going to be a must-win. So we'll have two drivers that are going to be gunning for a win. That I don't know how Whitaker is at the road courses, as I've not been too familiar on his driving style. But with those two being in a must-win, do you think that the pressure for those two are going to be even heavier than the other drivers?
Yeah, I definitely think so, because to answer your question about Whitaker, his numbers at the road course is not that great. I believe he's only got one top 10 in the road course starts this season. So really, it's going to be a struggle for him. It's going to be a struggle for Joshua Gordon. I mean, right now, based off of what I'm seeing, it looks like the drivers that will be heading into the Charlotte Roval next week below the cut line are going to be the aforementioned Whitaker, Roger Gregory, Joshua Gordon, and Brandon Andrews. The only driver that might have a ghost of a shot, maybe of pointing his way in, might be the 12 of Roger Gregory, and that's just because he came in less than 10 points between himself, Kevin Roy, and Evan Longacre, and right now he's running right in the same vicinity as they are on the racetrack. So he may be the only driver that could spoil the party points-wise, but I think everybody else that's going to be below the cut line next week at the Charlotte Roval, they are going to have to take that checkered flag.
And as we mentioned, it's not an easy track to do it at. A lot of these drivers kind of a love-hate relationship with that configuration, and I have to say, with the new configuration, we'll have to see what they can do with it. Gregory, again, like you mentioned, we haven't talked about him all night long except for just now, and he's been kind of running quietly back here in the 8th position. I mean, we've mentioned him when we were mentioning battles and mentioning where he was positioned on the racetrack, but still a good run. He's actually taken 7th place, so someone is on pit road. The 4 is on pit road.
That's Kevin Roy, who I'm guessing probably couldn't make it on fuel. You were questioning it being a little bit too early for him to come down pit lane. I don't know if he was planning on a late race caution and take advantage of the fresh tires, but oh boy, Kevin Roy could very well have actually just taken himself out of the playoffs and put himself behind the cutoff line, moving Roger Gregory in. If Gregory can continue to hold where he's at, or maybe pick up a couple of spots before the checkered flag.
This whole landscape going into next week has definitely changed with that. He decided to roll the dice, Roy did. We're in Las Vegas. Gambling's legal, so he was like, I'll take my shot. And unfortunately, Lady Luck was not on his side tonight. So far, still green flag racing. If he were to get a caution, he's 2 laps down, so he wouldn't even get back on the lead lap. That honor would go to Carson Bowers still, who is running a very fast 16 car. And man, just took a gamble, didn't quite work out. I'm surprised that we haven't seen a whole lot of other drivers do that, though. It's really only been Kevin Roy that we've seen take an outlandish gamble like that. And, it could have worked, though. It really could have worked.
But again, I'm not really sure I understand it. But again, here's the thing. We're up here. We're being able to work the calculators, look at the points, see where people are running. These drivers down there, they're not really thinking about points. They're trying to think about what can I do to better my position. And then they worry about the points afterwards. After they take off the helmet, they look and see what their situation is heading into next week. So, while we're in possession of all the numbers up here, Kevin Roy maybe not aware that his situation was actually pretty good if he had come to pit road around the same time as most of the rest of the race leaders.
Right, and for a driver especially in this kind of a setup, you're doing all of it. You're driving, you're strategizing throughout the entire race. You have to come up with everything, and sometimes something gets lost in translation, and you don't really, you miscalculate just how much you can do something with, how much the fuel run is, how your tires look like, and so you have to work through all this while you're driving, battling other drivers. It's not an easy task, and yeah, we can sit up here and backseat drive all we want to, like you mentioned, but when it comes down to it, these are some of the most challenging series in the world, and these drivers do a fantastic job week in and week out being able to have these good runs and strategize all at the same time, and we got to give them credit where credit's due.
Sam and I have obviously been during the regular season and, of course, starting off the playoffs here, trying to figure out, who do we look at as potential drivers to be those final four to eventually battle for the championship at ISM Raceway on November 6th. This is the only 1.5 mile track here in this round of 12, but in the round of 8, there's 2.5 mile tracks at Kansas and Texas. Do we maybe look at the drivers, the playoff drivers that are running well here tonight, as maybe some of those to keep an eye on to be your final four?
Definitely, because Kansas is very much like Las Vegas, where the track is a bit narrower than some of the other 1.5 miles. It's fast, and for people like Helton and Tim Williams and Santini, they're definitely going to keep that momentum going into that race, and they could easily get a win there. You think to Texas, a wider track, a much wider turn one that we've seen at any other racetrack that we run in the regular season or even in the postseason. And yeah, definitely, it's going to be a different way to run that race. But if anything tonight gauges that we could see May or Gordon up there running well. And again, I think the Final Four is definitely going to include either the 8, the 99, or the 19. And what capacity, though, I'm not sure if they're going to sweep the final rounds or if they're going to have a little bit of lady luck on their side as well.
Of course, we've got Iowa. That's going to be a short track race for the final race heading into that championship 4 battle at ISM. That's going to be interesting, as really there haven't been a lot of short tracks run this season. They ended up running Bristol, of course, last week, and they ran Iowa earlier on this season, but there's been kind of a lack of short tracks for these drivers so far this year.
Yeah, and the lack of short tracks, it really comes down to there are some available on this platform, but short tracks provide some great racing, and sometimes it's kind of sad to see that there's not a whole lot of short tracks on the schedule. Now, we might get an early version of the Auto Club short track, which if we do that, then that would get some attention towards short tracks, as it'll be the first new short track since I believe the early 70s, I would say. So definitely going to be a factor for them. And short track racing, it's an art. It's not like any other racing in the world where you have to be good all the time. Not just, you can't take a breath because there's always action going on around you. 1.5 miles, quarter miles, 3/4 miles. Even some tracks that aren't quite a mile are considered short tracks. And for short track drivers, you got to be thinking that they're kind of kicking themselves that there weren't as many short tracks on the season. But for the ones that were on here, you got Bristol, you've got I believe Martinsville was not on the schedule, I don't think. I'm looking at it right now. No, so really only you had was Bristol and Richmond that were your 2 short tracks. And you went to Bristol twice, and we saw some great racing there, and I'm kind of hoping that we see more in the future.
This battle for second place looks like it's going to be the best one here in the final laps of this race, closing in on 20 laps to go. And it's been the 2 guys that have been at it pretty much since the drop of the green flag, whether it be for the race lead, whether it be for second place, where they find themselves battling now. But Tim Williams and David Santini, right now, for both of them, they're going to find themselves in very good point situations heading into Charlotte. So is this now just kind of a test of wills of who's going to get second, who's going to get third, just kind of maybe for some pride?
I think definitely at this point. I don't know if I'd use my stuff up tonight. You got to hold some momentum going in, and you don't really want to make enemies going into the next week's race because, again, being that a lot of the time at that track you're running at very slow speeds, you find yourself next to each other, and if you have some bad blood carrying over from this race to the next race, so don't look too quickly. You might find yourself into the tire barrier quicker than you find yourself in the lead of the race. But yeah, I also think that there's some one-upsmanship going on with these two drivers saying, you know what? I'm going to take the second position. I'm going to prove to you that I can beat you even at a race where we don't have to push, but I still want to push you to let you know what my level of competitiveness is going to be throughout the rest of the playoffs.
About another 4 seconds behind them, you've got teammates battling for the fourth position, Jeffrey Meyer and Joshua Gordon, the RSS Racing teammates. And of course, for Jeffrey Meyer coming to this race, 11 points ahead of the cut line. He's going to have a nice points cushion between himself and that elimination spot heading into next week at the Charlotte Roval. But Joshua Gordon looking like he's going to get himself a top 5 run here this evening, which would end up being his 6th of the season. But our New Hampshire winner looking like he is going to be in a must-win situation, really regardless of where he finishes here tonight, unless he is able by some miracle to eke out the victory this evening at Las Vegas.
And it's looking a little bit more and more unrealistic for him to do that, barring a yellow flag coming out in the late stages of the race. He is running well. He's actually going for a position now on the 38, so that's going to move him up to the 4th place position. If he can get the job done in 1 and 2, which he does, he sails it in and give that position to the 93. And yeah, when we get to the must win, it's going to be critical for the 93 to have a great run. We've touched on it a bunch tonight that once you get that, having this momentum, a 4th place position isn't exactly easy either. So he's going to have some momentum going into the next week's race. At least he can have that. But yeah, definitely a critical situation next week at the cutoff race.
Now that pass could be important for Joshua Gordon because with moving to 4th, he is now 5 positions ahead of Kevin Roy, who's right now back in 9th. Bear in mind, though, Kevin Roy has a bonus point for a lap led this evening. Joshua Gordon does not. But also, the big thing, the big X factor that we have here based off of trying to figure out who's got a shot, who doesn't heading into the Charlotte Roval next week, we don't know how many drivers are going to be showing up. If we have, the same number of drivers that we had here this evening, about 15 drivers taking the green flag, it's going to make it near impossible for certain drivers to be able to point their way in, making it a must-win situation. But, if we end up having 20, 23, 25 drivers show up, then we may have a mathematical chance for drivers to not necessarily have to rely on a W to get them into the next round.
Yeah, a lot more positions for you to gain and a lot more positions for other people to lose. And if they get that amount of drivers, then yeah, it does. It changes the entire landscape. Then for people like Gordon, maybe puts a little bit of weight off of their chest, trying to see if they can, maybe, like you said, not pull off a win, but definitely get a good run and have other drivers have bad luck. Because we've seen that, if you get damaged at some of these tracks, it could be detrimental to your run. And, getting that field size up is what some of these drivers are hoping for. But we also have another X factor going into next week, and that's Whitaker. What will Chris Whitaker do? Because he is going to be in a must-win situation, as we touched on earlier. What does he do? Is he going to be content to just roll over and take it, or do you think that he is going to be as big of a loud voice as these other drivers?
Yeah, that definitely going to be an X factor as well. I mean, Whitaker advanced into the playoffs with a win at Talladega this season. As mentioned, his road course program hasn't been the best, but much like tonight, where we saw drivers do a little bit of pit strategy, we're going to see the potentiality of pit strategy at the Charlotte Roval. Now, yes, there are a lot more places to make a mistake, a lot more opportunities for the track to get blocked up and maybe throw a full course yellow, but at most road courses, incidents that take place don't necessarily constitute a caution. And with the potentiality that next week's Charlotte Roval race could go green flag from start to finish, going to see a lot of potential for some drivers to maybe think outside the box and try some pit strategy, maybe try a Hail Mary throw to advance into the round of 8.
And right now we have to go back to our live vision of the second place battle, because now it's not only just second and third that are in a battle. They got to get around some lap traffic. It's the 24, the 01, and I believe that's the 16. Oh, and a battle in the 24. Gets to the wall. The 19 gets a little bit checked up. Has to go 3 wide, and the 99 is going to go to the inside. This is getting a very scary situation for these top 2.
Yes, it is. You saw right there, Brandon Andrews kind of pushing up into the 19 of Tim Williams. Not certain that might not have been a little bit of a door bang payback for when the 19 got into him going into turn 1. Tremendous job by Tim Williams to avoid getting up into the outside wall, but this will drop him back to the 3rd position. Firmly in control of 2nd place now is going to be David Santini, but he's still got a wall of cars to get through.
Yeah, and those cars are battling for position, so they're not going to be too keen to just give up the time lost to let the 99 through. He's going to have to work for it, but he's gotten around the 16, so that's 1 car done. Now he sets his sights on the 01. Meanwhile, Williams, he's going to be fired up after that. He's going to try and get his way back up to the 99 and maybe take the 2nd position back.
Well, like I said, Tim Williams, the big problem for him is he's been a contender just about the entire season, but he gets himself into trouble. Is not able to close out the deal, whether it's getting involved in a late race wreck or having a pit road miscue. I think right now he's got to keep his cool. He's got to realize the situation he's in right now, finishing in 3rd. I believe he's had a lap led here tonight as well. I mean, he's going to find himself in a good position heading into the road course next week. He cannot afford in these final 10 laps to have that 19 car all torn up.
Not at all, and Las Vegas is throwing the dice on some of these drivers, and it could have just taken out a competitor, and someone that I've been really happy to see that would probably have been Gordon. But yeah, like you said, you got to keep your cool. It's only you're basically locked in. You just got to stay consistent, and that's what Williams has to do. So, we've seen this track catch out a few drivers, and behind Williams, it looks like that maybe that was Gordon that was trying to get up. Now, Gordon is now closing in on Williams, because I think that 19 has got something wrong with the car. He did touch the wall a little bit, so I don't know if that knocked anything loose or if the aero on that car is not as good as it is. But in the latter stages of this race, we're only 9 laps away from the end of this race. We got a battle for 3rd place, which could alter the point standings even more.
Yeah, and with what we saw, that gaggle of 5 race cars, 2 on the lead lap, 3 a lap down, I mean, we cannot yet rule out the possibility of a caution coming out. There's still 9, about to be 8 laps to go as Helton hits the line. So if a yellow flag does come out due to some drivers making contact, that changes up everything. And if it does happen, it's probably going to happen here in this battle for the 3rd position.
93 to the inside of the 19 at a turn 1. Give that position to Joshua Gordon, as the 19 of Williams seems to have something wrong with his car. He's used up a lot of his stuff in that battle. And now the 93, he's got into the 3rd place position. Another point added to his championship hopes. And, it's come to crunch time. He's trying to make up as best he can. He's now going to set his sights on the 99. I don't think he's got enough time to close in a 2-second gap, but that 93 is on a tear with about 6 or 7 laps to go.
He's running a little bit slower than David Santini. Santini's been able to clear himself of traffic. Gordon has been able to do the same. So now it just comes down to raw speed and how much tire the 93 still has. Right now, just based off my rough calculations, with Kevin Roy back in 9th, Gordon up in the 3rd position, that'd be about 5 points that Joshua Gordon has gained on Kevin Roy, who I still think is going to be in that final 8th elimination spot heading into next week. So it's going to be about 27 points between those two heading into next week's race.
And that's a big gap that you need to make up, and that would effectively put it in a must-win unless they get car count. And with all the bonus points, I don't know if that would be enough. But getting into the latter stages of the race, we're on lap 146. 5 laps to go for your leader, Helton, who has been out front ever since the last pit stop. He was able to get a lightning fast stop, got that car back on the racetrack, and he has never looked back. It has been all that 8 team from about lap 105 onto lap 146.
Amazing how the season has shifted. When we first started broadcasting the Rapid Fire Pizza National Series, it was all David Santini But then as we got towards the end of the regular season and here into the playoffs, Logan Helton's been able to go to victory lane 3 times of his 4 wins. We saw Barry Stevens go to victory lane last week, and Helton looking for win number 5 on the season to lock himself into the next round of the playoffs. And when we think about it too, of his 4 wins, only one of them this season was at another mile and a half, and that was the D-shaped mile and a half of Charlotte. He's got 2 wins at a road course and 1 win at a short track here this season as well.
A very diverse group of tracks that he's won at too. He's proven that he's good on a number of different track types, and if all goes well for him tonight, he'll add another mile and a half track to his repertoire, and that will be Las Vegas Motor Speedway. As we're 3 laps to go to the end of this race, the battle for second is gone as Santini's running all by himself, just crossing the line, and Joshua Gordon is running 3rd place, but he is ever closing slowly, but it's not enough. I don't think he's going to have enough race time, or he's going to have enough race to do it.
Well, he very nearly had a caution to help him there, as we were going to follow this battle for the lucky dog position. Well, actually, it's no longer for the lucky dog position, as Roger Gregory just went a lap down, but Kevin Roy getting around Carson Bowers for 8th, and then he nearly lost it off of turn 4 and nearly got run over by Bowers and Stevens. So that was a close call there off of turn 4, but Kevin Roy picks up a spot, picks up a point there in his battle between himself, the 12, and the 93.
And that's a critical point too for Roy, as he's trying to close it in, make it impossible for that 93 to have a shot next week unless he wins the race. But the white flag is in the air. 1 lap to go for the 8 car, who has had a dominant car all night long. As he gets the 1 lap to go, he's got a lap car in front of him to try to deal with, but he can coast the rest of the way if he needed to.
12 and a half seconds back to the second place driver, his teammate David Santini. Logan Helton finished out the regular season with a trip to victory lane 2 weeks ago at Richmond. He's going to win the second playoff race here tonight. He easily advances into the round of 8 if he wasn't already locked in on points, taking the checkered flag tonight under the lights at Las Vegas.
A fantastic run for that 8 team as they pull off a dominating performance here tonight, and I don't think there was any car out there that was as good as the 8 wholesale. He was able to get on the track, very fast stop that last time around, and just never, ever looked back. And a good credit run for the 99 of Santini, who comes away second. Joshua Gordon did all he could, did everything that he possibly could do tonight to get a good run. He finds himself 3rd place, but our winner, Helton, I don't think there's any question who is going to be the winner of this race.
No doubt about it. I mean, the thing I think that really impressed me as well, we saw drivers like Santini and Williams try to short pit Logan Helton, and that didn't phase him at all. Logan Helton had a strategy of when he wanted to pit, he didn't phase from it, and those fresher tires there on the longer run was what helped him be able to take the lead back from Santini, not once, but twice, and be able to pull away by over 12 seconds here coming to the start-finish line. A dominating performance for that BJ McLeod Motorsports Supra. And right now, BJ McLeod Motorsports 2 for 2 here in the first round of the playoffs. We'll have to see if next week they can either sweep it or maybe have Santini have all 3 of the team members go to victory lane here in this first round.
Yeah, that would be a great boost for the team as a whole going into the round of 8, knowing that you've got the dominant team. And as Helton burns it down for the fans here in Las Vegas. When we've seen tonight where strategy was the king of the race, and Helton definitely had the best strategies. He goes a lap backwards, saluting the fans here at Las Vegas. He rolled the dice on strategy, and like you said, he had one. He kept to it, and that team definitely got the best strategy out there as he easily walks away with this win.
You talk about Joshua Gordon doing what he needed to do, at least getting the best finish possible with a 3rd place run. Well, the same could be said of Evan Longacre, who came into this race 2 points behind the cut line after his struggles at Bristol last week. 6th place run, so he would be in the top 8 heading into the Charlotte Roval next week. Roger Gregory's going to be close because he was only 6 points behind Kevin Roy, and he finishes 1 position ahead of Kevin, so I believe it's going to be I think it's still going to be 6 points because Kevin Roy had that lap-led bonus point, so it's still going to be close between those two potentially for that final playoff spot.
Yeah, we're going to see a really close points battle going into next week's race at Charlotte. It's going to, the points battle still very much alive as we set our sights next week. And as Helton gets around the track again, it's this round of 12 has definitely proven that, it's been exciting to watch. And we've seen that, just because that you're in a tough situation doesn't mean that you can't pull it out. As tonight, Gordon, like you said, closes or doesn't really close like that, but Roy and Gordon are going to be battling a lot for the next for the round of 8 spot. But Whitaker also is a wild card driver, as you say.
Absolutely. Going to be interesting to kind of crunch the numbers heading into next week, seeing who has the best statistics at the road courses we've run so far this season heading into that Charlotte Roval, especially for those drivers that are going to be battling to try and either point or win their way in to the round of 8. It looks like our third place finisher, Joshua Gordon, is not here. So let's get our second place finisher, David Santini, and find out what it was like out there for that 150 laps. Clean and green from the standpoint of our second place finisher. Hey, David, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got me?
Yeah, I got you guys. What's going on?
Well, man, I mean, talk about a strategy race, 150 laps, no caution whatsoever. So you guys had to kind of mix it up in terms of when you were going to come to pit road, splitting it up there with that 2-stopper. It looked like you, the 8, the 19, even the 93, and maybe even, I think it was the 11, all seemed to be kind of at the same in terms of the long run speed. Was it pit road that was the deciding factor here tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm just happy to be back up here with you guys. It feels like it's been forever. But yeah, no, I wanted to mix it up. I thought me and Logan were pretty even there at the beginning. So I was expecting only 1 or 2 cautions max in this race because that's how these have been running, and with so few people. I figured I'd try to short pit to mix it up and see what would happen, come out ahead. However, it didn't quite work out, as Logan was obviously a few seconds behind me when I came out, but just having those few laps fresher tires really helped him out in the long run there.
You know, obviously we've got next week the Charlotte Roval, the elimination race. With your playoff points, you were pretty well situated coming into this round, but I know, as you stated, it's been a while since we've talked to you. It's been a while since you've been to Victory Lane. Your numbers at road course this season have been really good. 3 of your 4 starts, you've been up inside the top 5. 2 of those runner-up finishes to your teammate Logan Helton. So what's the strategy when you get to the Charlotte Roval next week? Do you try and beat that 8 car, try and find Victory Lane, and maybe complete a BJ McLeod sweep here for round 1?
Well, absolutely. That's the plan. But unfortunately, even though I'm strong at these road courses, Logan typically seems to be equal or a little more. So I always have him to worry about, of course, going to the road races. But I mean, even so, to have any BJ car win is a bonus. So to be 1-2, and then Barry got his win last week. So we're in a pretty good spot here. I'm pretty sure even after tonight, I'm all but locked in, I guess, to the next round here. So yeah, we might try to mix it up next week too and see what kind of strategy we can pull out and see if we can pull something off.
Now again, going into the next week, it's going to be a critical race for some drivers who are lower in the stands, but you've got it clean and green throughout the rest of the round of 12. Like Seth mentioned, pretty much locked in. Now, how close are you going to battle with your teammates? Do you think just because they're teammates, are you going to give them any slack, or are you going to go hard for that win next week, as we saw you battling hard tonight?
Well, I think that's kind of where we're starting to get here. You know, all season you're kind of a little bit more lenient. However, you also want your teammates to do well even in the playoffs. But again, it's the playoffs. So if you can get a win and lock yourself into the next round no matter what, I mean, that's always what you want to do. So like I said, we're still a little early in the playoffs, but I mean, they both have wins now here in this round, which is great. So yeah, we'll see what we can do next weekend, or 2 weeks. I'm sorry.
Hey, right, we actually do have an off week next week here. One thing I got to ask you here, David, from a driver's standpoint, you know, Anthony and I were up here and we were mentioning the fact that this is the only 1.5-mile track that you drivers are doing here in the round of 12. But in the round of 8, you guys have back-to-back mile-and-a-half tracks, and a lot of the playoff drivers up here inside of the top 5 for this one, and we're trying to speculate, who are we going to be seeing advance to that championship Final Four at ISM? Have you been able to kind of formulate in your head who you think those other 3 competitors might be if you advance to the Final Four, and are you trying to kind of set a measuring stick in the mile-and-a-half program with them?
I mean, we would love if me, Logan, and Barry could get in, but I mean, with the way these races have been here late, I mean, you can't really guess any of this stuff because I mean, anything could happen. I mean, Bristol, me and Logan were running strong, and then all of a sudden, like that, we were both out of it. And then, I don't know. Tim's been really strong here today, had a great run. Jeffrey's been fast. All these guys are fast. So, like I said, you never know what's going to happen here, but. Yeah, I mean, you want to get stronger and stronger every week because you have to do it here in the playoffs.
Well, David, obviously, we'd love to see you back in victory lane. Maybe it'll happen next week at the Charlotte Roval. But at this point in time, I believe you're already locked in on points. So congratulations on advancing into the round of 8. We look forward to seeing what you're going to be able to do, having that weight off your shoulders when we get to the road course next week. But for now, we're going to let you do some shout-outs.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Like I said, it's just good to be back up here with you. Of course, though, thank you to Bearing for being on the car, and then Rapid Fire Pizza, Iracing, iFlag, FSM Custom, Shorbers Racing Graphics, Biting Love Memorial Urns, and then Logan and Barry over at BJ McLeod for us all working together so well and being so strong here in the playoffs.
Well, that's David Santini. We know he'll be one of the 8 drivers that will be battling to get into the Final Four in about 3 weeks' time. But best of luck again next week, David, and congrats on a great run here tonight.
Yep, thanks, guys.
And let's go down to Victory Lane, where Logan Helton is standing by. Logan, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yes, I do.
Well, man, I mean, the hardships of Bristol last week when you were battling for the lead to a dominating performance here tonight at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And I mean, you basically, at this point in time, were already locked into the next round of the playoffs on points. But how important is it as a team that has been able to go to victory lane 4 times prior to have this momentum going into the round of 8 with a win?
I think it's really important. I'm really trying to build up my confidence and learn new things and learn the setups even more as before. And I think I'm like getting better just as a driver, and I'm really trying to put the things that I learn in official races this week into my league races on Friday, and it's really been paying off. And yeah, I'm already thinking about 2 weeks from now at Charlotte. I'm super excited for that road course.
Yeah, so we mentioned the fact that in 2 of the 4 road course races we've had this season, you've been able to put that 8 car in victory lane. So, your mile-and-a-half program here tonight looks really good. And we got 2 mile-and-a-half tracks coming up in the round of 8. You ended up winning a couple weeks ago at a short track at Richmond, and we've got Iowa in the round of 8 as well. So looking towards the round of 8 there, I mean, obviously you've got to be feeling pretty confident about advancing into that Final Four in the championship finale at ISM. But how important is it for you to take a win next week as well at the Charlotte Roval to keep this momentum up?
I think it's just for me. It makes me feel good about myself. Obviously the points and everything, but it's definitely not going to come easy. It's not going to be just as easy looking at the stats and seeing who's doing good, because I know David's going to be hungry for a win for missing out these first 2 races, and so will any Cup guys coming down if they're still allowed to. But yeah, I'll definitely be trying my best there, but it's not going to be easy.
Tonight we saw that strategy was a big important part because we went checkered or green to checkered, completely green, and we saw that you were the best, had the best strategy out of all the others tonight. That second pit stop was lightning quick. How confident are you going into next week, or I'm not sorry, next week, 2 weeks from now, that you can carry the momentum you had from this race to that race, strategy wise, and formulate a strategy to pull out a win there as well?
I've always felt like my pit strategy is not the best, but it's better than the average. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've never been a fan of short pitting because if anything, it's going to make you slower, guaranteed long run. And this league is all about long run. So at the beginning of this year, I was like, oh, short pitting was like the best thing there ever was. But ever since I started, I've realized I'm always trying to go for long run. And the second that I saw people pitting like 5 laps earlier than I wanted to, it just made it even more like, all right, I know for sure I want to pit 5 laps from now because I knew I'd have 5 lap extra tires, and I didn't mind being, 5, 6 seconds back if I first came out the pits because I knew if I was if I wasn't even pushing it, I'd catch them just from the fact I have better tires than them.
Now, Logan, obviously, whenever we go to a road course, a driver's main focus is to try and qualify as far up at the front as possible and try and stay ahead of the mayhem. But with the fact that the Charlotte Roval next week is going to be an elimination race, and there's going to be a couple handful of drivers that are going to be either in must-win situations or may have to actually finish up there, at least in the top three, to be able to advance into the next round of the playoffs. I mean, does that kind of have you a little bit worried that some of these guys might get up there and race you really, really aggressive, trying to get that win to advance into the next round? And how do you approach that?
Well, I don't think I can get mad at anybody that's on the lead lap trying to race me for position. If anything, it makes it more fun for me. But I am a little bit worried about how aggressive they'll race. Not necessarily about the fact they will be racing, but it's more of like I trust the people I've been racing around up front all season long because I've been racing with them all season long. But some people that might need to advance from a win and they get a good setup and a lot of practice that week and they're competitive, it'll definitely be a little different if I don't know them really race wise.
Well, Logan, obviously, we've already documented the momentum that you have had here, not only at the end of the regular season, but also here as well, beginning off the playoffs. You're already locked now into the round of 8. And next, of course, in 2 weeks' time, you're going to be going to a road course, which you've been very good on here with your numbers this season. So we look forward to seeing what you're going to be able to do there. But we're going to turn the microphone over to you now. Let's do some shout outs.
Yeah, just thanks to my team first of all. David got a really good setup going this week, and whenever I got the setup, I kind of made a couple changes, and he helped me figure out what changes to make. Also, and also to Mr. Barry for us having a funny joke thing in the middle of the race. Only we will know. But just thanks to all my sponsors, RGC Media, LKH Graphics, family and friends for watching the race, and you guys for putting on the broadcast. Everyone here at the league that puts this on for us, and I think that's it.
Well, that's Logan Helton. He picks up the victory here tonight in a clean and green 150 lapper at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Congrats on a great run, your 5th win of the season there, Logan. Enjoy your off week next week, and we look forward to talking to you in 2 weeks' time.
Yes.
And that is going to wrap it up here this evening from Las Vegas. And I mean, Anthony, usually it's those middle races in the middle of the playoff rounds that end up having the most weight bearing on what the situation is going to be heading into those elimination races. And Las Vegas, being the clean and green race that it really was pit road that was the deciding factor into what the point situation is going to be when we get to the Roval in 2 weeks.
Yeah, pit road definitely reared its ugly head tonight, and we saw a lot of drivers get caught out on strategy. A couple of them sped on pit road, and maybe especially this pit road because it's really hard to get onto this one compared to some other tracks. And you slow down to get onto this one and get off, and it really determined how quick your overall stop was. And you're right, the middle of the road, I should say, is you already know where you stand from the first race of the round of 12. Now you're in the middle of the round. You know where you're going to be standing in the next round, which is going to be the cutoff round. They're the weight of the middle round because you have this weight of, yeah, I need to do good here that way that I don't have to have such a close situation going into the final round where I don't have another shot if it goes wrong. So I have to have a good shot tonight. That way I have a buffer in case it has to come down to a final ditch effort. But with some drivers, it paid off. They got in, no problem. Other drivers, that weight is shifted from this race to the next race at Charlotte.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because for those that may already know if they've tuned into other Flatout Racing Network broadcasts, or if they don't know, Anthony is a road course connoisseur. He's got a lot more knowledge than I do. So let's say that you're a driver that's either just above the cut line or just below the cut line. You're approaching the Charlotte Roval in either one of those situations. What is the goal going into that road course?
Survive. That's the goal. Turn one is definitely going to be chaotic on the start of the race. You have a lot of momentum going in. We've seen in a number of races where, especially with stock cars, they overdrive turn one. So you got to have a good whereabouts of what's happening on the racetrack, of the chicane on the back stretch, the chicane, the final chicane going on to the front stretch, the middle part of the track, the infield part of the track. You have to be solid through there, having a good run, hitting your marks, being consistent lap after lap. Also, qualifying. You have to qualify well if you're going to avoid a lot of stuff. Some drivers might try to qualify towards the back, though, to maybe avoid a first turn incident that would happen and try to claw their way through the field as they go. But stock cars at the Charlotte Roval, which is really the only cars we've seen in the modern layout, they used to race, the old Grand Am series used to race back in the 70s and the 80s there. But with these modern cars, we've only seen stock cars at this racetrack during an official race. And so we have those to base off of. You're definitely going to have to consider be aware, qualify well, stay consistent throughout the race, and that's how you can win at pretty much any road course, but Charlotte specifically.
Going to be a pretty chaotic one. Our camera crew are going to have to be working overtime, as there may be a lot of incidents in different portions of the track in that one in 2 weeks' time. We know right now that Logan Helton, Barry Stevens are locked in the next round through wins. David Santini would be locked in through points. He had a nice cushion. Jeffrey Meyer, I think, with his top 5 run, also would be locked in on points. The jury is still out about Carson Bowers and Tim Williams, but that cutoff line is where we'll certainly be focusing when we get to the Charlotte Roval in 2 weeks' time. But Logan Helton got to burn it down here tonight at Las Vegas Motor Speedway for his first win of the playoffs, his 5th win overall here this season in the Rapid Fire Pizza National Series. Anthony, I appreciate you joining me here tonight for this one. A great green flag lapper, 150 lapper here tonight in Las Vegas.
It was a fun race. It was really fun to watch these drivers battle it out. A gentleman's race, a driver's race is what we saw tonight. And, close battles. Everyone kept it clean. We had a nail biter of a finish at the end. Were they going to make it? Could they make it? And they did make it all the way on fuel. We had a couple of scary incidents where lap drivers almost took out second and third place. But overall, fantastic race, and thank you, Seth, for letting me come and commentate with you. I don't get to do this often with you, and it's actually every time Matt comes to me and says, "Hey, can you do commentary with Seth tonight?" I'm like, yes, please.
Absolutely. Always a blast. And we appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight as well. As mentioned, the Rapid Fire Pizza National Series drivers, they're off next week. Tomorrow night, though, the Veterans of 4 and More Cup Series, they're going to be at Las Vegas Motor Speedway for their first race of the round of 12. Then they have a race next week, October 3rd at Talladega Super Speedway. And then both series, Rapid Fire and Veterans of 4 and War, will have their elimination rounds, their elimination races at the Charlotte Roval Road Course. That'll be on October 9th and October 10th, respectively. But for Anthony McCurry, I'm Seth Cole. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday evening. As we say goodnight from Las Vegas Motor Speedway, you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.